Well, thanks everyone for joining us and welcome to this Wednesday seminar. So the DSA, myself, Gretchen, and Omaris are very pleased to introduce Pamela Wynn, who is the founding director of Restore Her, an organization that is focused on restoring the rights of all women directly impacted by incarceration. She's a national leader in anti-shackling legislation, informing policy throughout the South and passing legislation in more than 15 states throughout the country. Restore Her is a core movement partner of the Southern Black Girls and Women Consortium and a partner of the National Network for Justice. Ms. Wynn is co-founder of the formerly incarcerated College Graduates Network, as well as the Unlocked Minds program for incarcerated women in partnership with Spelman College. Ms. Wynn created the Dignity Lead Hership Alliance, a collective of directly impacted women with successful experience informing policy through lived expertise and advocating for marginalized women internationally. She is the vice president for the board of directors with the Association for Justice-Involved Female Organizations, a board member of Motherhood Beyond Bars, and serves on the advisory council for the National Religious Campaign Against Torture. Ms. Wynn is recognized by the Forbes 50 over 50 impact list of top women leaders for social change in the United States and is featured in the short film documentaries Wynn Movie, The Box, and Counted. She has also been featured in Essence Magazine, She the People, Miss Magazine, Women's Republic, ATL's Most Inspiring in Voyage ATL Magazine, and many other media articles and podcasts. Pamela Wynn is a Leading with Conviction Fellow of Just Leadership USA, Erin J. Woolley Fellow of the Feminist Women's Health Center, a Community Change Women's Leadership Fellow, a Soros Justice Fellow with Open Society Foundation, an Opportunity Agenda Communications Institute Fellow, and a 2021 member of the Women Transcending Collective Leadership Institute. So we know that you will enjoy this amazing presentation and discussion entitled Trash, Traumatic Realities American Society Hides. And with that, I want to turn it over to Pamela Wynn and colleagues Abby Cook, the PR director at Restore Her, and Sophia Howard, a policy intern. So I'll turn it over to you all. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Selena. Hi, everybody. My name is Sophia Howard. I'm a recent graduate of Spelman College and the other founder of Unlocked Minds at Spelman, a prison education program in Whitworth Women's Prison, which is in Hartwell, Georgia. And we're so happy to be here. My colleague Abby and I will be doing the beginning part of the presentation. So like Selena said, the title of this presentation is Trash. Trash stands for the Traumatic Realities American Society Hides, and is one of the projects and initiatives that, that Ms. Wynn founded and Restore Her a few years ago. Restore Her US America Inc., or as we just call it, Restore Her for short, is a policy advocacy reentry organization led by and led for justice-involved women of color based in Georgia. Restore Her addresses the social determinants of criminalization and intersectionality of social inequities through education, leadership, and policy change to protect the dignity, reproductive justice, and restore the rights of all women directly impacted by incarceration, convictions, and other traumas. Our mission at Restore Her is to enhance the lives of directly impacted women and work in partnership with those women to end the vicious cycle that leads to mass incarceration and prison birth for women of color and pregnant women in the South. Restore Her has a vision of a world where women of color impacted by mass criminalization and incarceration receive gender-based education, healthcare, rehabilitation, alternative sentencing, and full restoration of their rights so that they can move forward with hope, dignity, and opportunities to make important contributions to our community. So why trash? Trash brings attention to the dehumanizing, reoccurring trauma, lack of treatment, and rapid increase of incarceration of women. More than 80% of incarcerated women are primary caregivers. They have kids under the age of 18, and they're also disproportionately women of color, low income, and live with mental illness and suffer from the trauma of surviving some type of abuse. So one of the reasons additionally that trash is really important and the work that we do is really important, and the name that we have that is rather catchy, is because it's really important that we bring the attention of the most marginalized in our community to the forefront of the work that we do. Because Restore Her is an organization that is led by directly impacted people. I'm the only person on our team that's not been incarcerated. It centers the stories of those that have the experience, that have the knowledge, and unfortunately have the trauma that other people cannot replicate or fully understand in the work that we do. And so that's something that's really important in the nonprofit world and public interest sector, is that the work that we do, we are very intentional about not exploiting the stories of those who are directly impacted or most affected. Rather, we use those individuals and their stories as tools. And so my colleague Abby is going to read some of the testimonies of women who have been incarcerated and who have been pregnant or given birth, or mothers that were incarcerated.
Hi, my name is Abby Cook. I'm formerly incarcerated, and I'll be sharing the story initially of Nakia Carter. Hello. I'm currently housed at Lee Arundel on a 20 but served 10 years. After I was sentenced, I was 7 months pregnant and was at DeKalb waiting to get shipped down the road. During my stay at DeKalb County, the water did not work and the toilet did not work. I was on a 23-hour lockdown, no way to get water, and a guard intentionally closed my stomach in the door. This caused me to dilate 3 centimeters, so they hurried and rushed me to the prison because they didn't want me to have my baby in there after the incident with my stomach. While I was at Helms, we had black mold in the shower. They didn't care that my blood pressure was up. When it was time to deliver my baby, I got induced. I was having contractions back to back, but not dilating, so they broke my water. The pain itself was horrible. Being in there all alone with the guard that you know is judging you for being in prison and your family doesn't know what's going on. They wouldn't let you shower properly or see your baby twice a day. They would let you sit there in pain, and if you ran out of pads, you would have to wait until the next shift. When I arrived back here, it was crazy. They had me staying in medical. Also, they didn't give me any clothes to change into and no blankets. I had to sleep on a turtle mat. I couldn't shower there because they wouldn't call properly to get any of the clothes or to even get clean clothes. So I sat there 3 days with the same soiled clothes that I went into labor with until they moved me to diagnostics. Once I got there, somebody was in my bed, so I had to get a top bunk, which caused a lot of strain on my body, but they did not care. They didn't give me any pads for 2 weeks. There's barely any tissue. Life was rough.
The criminal justice, prison, and reform systems have not traditionally considered the needs of incarcerated women. This oversight has caused incarcerated women to become marginalized, invisible, hidden figures left out of the conversation, resulting in women returning to their communities in worse condition than they entered the system. Incarcerated women are trash. They are traumatic realities American society hides.
This is the story of Shavona Reckler. Well, I really don't know where to begin, but here it goes. I've been locked up since December 7th, 2017. I was roughly 7 weeks pregnant when I was incarcerated. I will be having my baby next week due to the fact that I'm being induced. What day, I don't know, due to it being a breach of security. I have a 2-year sentence for credit card fraud. Although this is not my first child, this has been very difficult. My family is coming from West Virginia to get my daughter and raise her until I am released. When I was in the county, I was shackled for court and for my doctor's appointments. I was fed regular inmate trays, and my only extras were 4 pints of milk. Were 4 pints of milk and a peanut butter sandwich at night. I did not receive any fresh fruit, vegetables, or healthy food. I pray for the sake of others that this bill is passed. Oh, and before I forget, it would also be nice if we could visit more than 2 hours when we were at the hospital with our children. It would be even better if we could have a ward made here at the facility for the state of Georgia to house mothers and children for some determined amount of time so that we are able to raise and be with our children. Just some food for thought. We are not bad people. We just made some bad choices. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. This is a follow-up. I had my baby on August 22nd, and it was really hard to come back to this. They locked us down on the second floor of the hospital, and I could only see her for 8 hours total and 4 different visits. I was not even allowed to take a shower while I was there delivering a baby. Crazy, right? It was so miserable and one of the hardest things I ever had to do. Then we came back to Alto and was in medical for 3 days. On top of everything we went through at the hospital, we get here and my bunkie has staff in medical, and I was worried about catching it with stitches, sharing a toilet with no access to bleach. When we got back to diagnostics, they put me on the top bunk and turned off the phone so we couldn't even call and check on our kids. My family sent me pictures and the prison sent them back because my family put the Wilsons on the return address instead of Chad and Amanda Wilson. So now my baby is 2 months old and I've only seen her once when she was a day old. They also cut our visitation. They will not put me in classes for postpartum and will not get me on mental health meds either. They claim they are backed up. On a good note, I found out I make parole in December, so she will only be 4 months old, and then I'll get to hold her and love on her and kiss her. And best of all, be her mother. I also am in general population too, so it's much better with all of the so-called perks of being incarcerated. How did the bill go? You have to tell me about it. I'm looking forward to hearing from you. Thank you for including me in this. Shavana.
So before I continue, I think that there are a couple of points of context that are important for those of you who aren't necessarily familiar with the carceral system in the United States, and specifically the carceral system in the state of Georgia. So in Georgia, there is a facility called Helms Prison, and it is where all pregnant incarcerated women are supposed to be sent. It is a facility that was first created, it was first a male facility. It's not equipped with the necessary tools or needs that pregnant women have. And what you hear these first 2 stories illustrating is the inhumane treatment of the way that their bodies were handled and the spaces for which they were forced to stay. You also hear them talk about shackling and what that has been like for them. And then you also hear about the gross mistreatment of these prison guards. Helms, in theory, is a space that is supposed to focus exclusively on the needs of pregnant women. However, it does not. And so the work that we do is less of reimagining systems and more of breaking the systems down in order to liberate those that have been hidden or hurt or harmed by those systems. And so that's a really important aspect of this work and a really important aspect of having these testimonials, because prison, as much as it was designed to keep certain people in, it's designed to keep more people out. And so it's really important that we're intentional and purposeful on getting stories from women that are incarcerated out so that we can fully understand how they're being treated, what things are changing that are supposed to be changing, and how we can hold the state and these private prisons accountable. Trash shines light on the significant role that women play in mass incarceration through sharing lived experiences of directly impacted women, exposing how America dehumanizes, traumatizes, and marginalizes its women during incarceration. The price paid highly exceeds the crime and far exceeds the sentence. And that's a quote from that Pamela uses oftentimes. And that's what we usually use to reframe people's concept of crime and punishment. And the truth is that the things that these incarcerated women are going through, the things that they're being subjected to, far outweighs the crime that they're supposed to be serving time for. And so that's something that I just want everybody to keep in mind and to think about and be critical of. Does the punishment match the crime? Because in the United States, our prison system is not built on rehabilitation or accountability, it's built on punishment. And so if it's going to be a system that is built on punishment and it's going to exist solely for the purpose to punish, should the crime match the punishment? And with the treatment, particularly of women, and even more particularly of pregnant women, it simply does not.
This is the story of Brandy Lee. As you know, I am currently pregnant and in prison. The facility that I am now is for pregnant women. However, Bullitt County, where I came from, was not. Pregnant women were treated just as bad as everyone else. On the weekends, we only ate at 5 a.m. and 2 p.m. We were not given snacks or anything extra. They said that the vitamins they gave us provided us with what we needed for the baby, and we didn't need any extra food. I saw that girls were hurting or bleeding, get left in the back for hours without care. The nursing staff just ignored us for the most part. I'm so glad that you're trying to make a change. Helms Facility, August 30th, 2018. I've had my baby since the last time I talked with you. The whole hospital experience turned out to be one of the worst experiences I've ever had. After having the baby, they left me in the L&D room for about 2 hours. During the 2 hours, I got to spend a little over an hour with my baby. Next, they moved me downstairs to the prison floor. There, the nurses did not know how to take care of women who just had a baby. You have to beg to see your baby, and you're only allowed to spend 2 hours a shift with your baby. If the officer on duty will stay with you, since that is up to them. For the most part, the officers that are there with you during your labor are nice. However, the officer that was there with me in the morning I had my baby was very loud and rude. She stayed on the cell phone cursing, talking about smashing people, which means sex, and about people having babies that are locked up. I may be locked up, but I don't think it is right for them to sit on the phone and talk about me. Even the nurses were mad at how rude she was. She was talking to a male friend on FaceTime, so he was allowed to see me as well. She got up and turned down the machine that was monitoring my baby's heartbeat because it was too loud for her to hear her conversation. Once I arrived to the prison, there were no beds in the infirmary, so I was put in a lockdown cell with no mat. I had to sleep on the concrete floor with a blanket for a whole week in the same clothes that I arrived in. The counselor, Mrs. Fountain, came in and saw what was going on and moved me right then. We were not allowed to use the phone when we first get here for 8 weeks, so we couldn't even call and check on our babies. Thank you for checking in on me and caring. And this is Jada Davis. Good morning. My name is Jada Davis. Unfortunately for me, this is my second time having a baby in the prison system. When I was incarcerated during my first pregnancy, I was 7 months pregnant when I was first arrested. They kept me in medical holding cell for 3 weeks on a 23-hour lockdown. During that time, I started to develop a severe pain in my left leg that led to swelling and discoloration. They brushed it off several times saying, oh, that baby is just on a sciatic nerve. I don't think I said that right. You'll be fine, they said. He examined me and immediately I was taken to the emergency room. I was diagnosed with a blood clot bigger than a quarter and smaller than $50. A few days later, I was transferred to Helms. Upon my arrival, I was in a wheelchair because I could not walk. While I was there, I was put on bed rest, but the sad part was before my records were straightened out and I was made to crawl to pill call. It blew my mind. I had to take Lovenox shots twice a day in my stomach. One nurse in particular was so rough. It was like she was playing dartboard games with my pregnant belly. I cried so much because I felt like no one cared. Not one mention that there was a rat problem and cockroaches that were 2 to 3 inches long. During my second pregnancy and experience at Helms, I got there fairly early in my pregnancy. I was 15 weeks. Later on, I developed a severe pain in my upper abdominal area. Again, nothing was done except advised to drink plenty of water. Later, when I was getting my first ultrasound, when I was about 20 weeks pregnant, they had an accidental find when they discovered I had 3 large gallstones. I kept complaining that the pain was getting worse, but to no avail. They gave me Tylenol 3 for 14 days, and that was it. After that, I was lucky to get Tylenol, period. The nursing staff here is pitiful. There were 2 babies born in the hallway during my stay there. The nurses do not believe you when you say you are hurting and that you are telling the truth. Hopefully, things are turning out better for these women. I believe what you are doing will make a difference. God bless you and your work.
Is the goal of trash to spark controversial conversations, excuse me, forcing American society to examine themselves, the criminal justice system, its effects on children, destruction of families, and the highly negative impacts to incarcerated women. Trash will incite a demand for dignity, safety, rehabilitative programs, and the ideas of alternative means of incarceration for women. So the concept of trash in itself is a radical idea. And it's a radical idea in that we are demanding humanity for incarcerated women and a system that prioritizes punishment and pain to rehabilitation and creating people who are able to successfully contribute to our society. And so as you're listening to this talk, as you're going about your days, I would just implore you to think of the stories of the women that we just read. And remember that while we're on the outside, unable to see fully what's occurring on the inside, there's gross negligence and human rights violations being perpetrated to the citizens of this country. And we're now actually going to play the video of an interview of Pamela giving the story and testimony of her own experience with incarceration.
I was about 20 weeks when I miscarried, and I never received any type of medical care. I was sentenced to 78 months for a white-collar crime that involved the business that I owned. When I was first incarcerated, I was 6 weeks pregnant. When they would take me out to court, they would shackle me. They would put chains around my waist. And one of the days that I was traveling out, I was trying to step up in the van, and I slipped and I fell. The next few days later, I began spotting and having streaks of blood. So I sent medical requests to medical, and I got a request back stating that that was normal in pregnancy. So I sent the request back, and at that point, I explained to them that I had 3 nursing degrees, and OBGYN was one of my specialties. And from everything that I know, that was not normal during pregnancy. The director of the medical department, along with the doctor that contracted there to the medical facility, explained to me that the facility was set up for men. They had not expected to have women, and they definitely did not expect to have a pregnant woman. That they had nothing there for me, no equipment, no medication, nothing. They told me that they would have to send a request to the U.S. Marshals, which is who I guess their contract was with, and request to take me to be seen. The turnaround time for sending a request and receiving approval was 4 weeks. So we would have to submit another request and receive approval to take me to see an obstetrician. Then they held me in isolation, which I didn't understand. They said that they were keeping me in quote unquote medical isolation to watch me. You tell me that you're not punishing me, that's punishing me. The other issue I had there, they didn't have drinkable water. The fountain spouted out brown water. So in the process of all of this, I ended up miscarrying. This particular day that I hadn't had any water, I hadn't had anything to drink. And once we got locked in, I started cramping. And I knew from my experience, it was because I was probably dehydrated because I hadn't drank. But when I got up, I just felt like a gush of wetness, all over me, and it's dark and you can't see. So it kind of scared me. So I just sat back down and laid back down, and I'm laying there and I'm like, I don't know what I'm laying in. Now it's like full blown contractions. I can feel my belly, not enough. So it got to the point where there was a lady in the room with me. I ended up waking her up because I was hurting and she heard me. But again, we're locked in and we can't call anybody. So she went to the door and I remember she put her face in the crack of the door. She yelled out to the other ladies that there was something wrong. There's something wrong with Pam. There's something wrong with her. And we need to get help. And I remember hearing all those ladies, I can hear beating on the doors and screaming to the top of their lungs. Still, and nobody heard us. But they did it for hours until somebody finally came. They had me upstairs, and I had been asking since I've been there to be put on the bottom floor. And so when they came up, they didn't want to touch me, of course, because now when they opened the door, they it was blood that witness, that's what it was, and I could see it now, and it was everywhere. So they didn't want to touch me. They wanted to know if I could walk down the stairs, and I was so furious. I told them no. I wish I would even think about trying to walk down the stairs. They were going to have to touch me. They were going to have to do whatever they had to do. I was not going to do anything because I had been asking them to put me on the bottom floor. So they brought a stretcher up and they took me to medical. The young lady that was working that night, I believe she was a new nurse because she just didn't know how to handle the situation. Her asking the doctor, what does she do? Do I call 911 or do I call the marshals to come get? And I'm screaming, you call 911. I'm not gonna lay here and wait on a marshal to get here. And the doctor did tell her to call 911 and the marshals could meet us at the hospital or whatever they wanted to do. But at this point, I guess she was concerned about her liability of her position. So she wanted me out of there. So she did call 911. The ambulance came. I got to the hospital. As soon as I got there, it wasn't the marshals, but the company that transports us, they have a contract with the marshals. And these were the people that were transporting me. They were there. They showed up about the same time we got there. And as soon as they got there, they immediately cuffed me, checked me to the bed. I remember the nurse asking them, was it necessary? Did they have to do that? Because I was in a lot of pain. And they said that, yeah, I had to be shackled. There was nowhere around it. They were there present the entire time, through every procedure, through everything that I had to go through, there. And I'm looking like, I don't even know these men between my, they all in my personal business. And during the whole thing, they just having a casual conversation about what they're gonna do tonight and this, that, and the other. And I'm looking and I'm like, can they just please shut up? I know they're not gonna go anywhere. So I guess, I don't know how my face was looking, but it was like she read my mind and she asked them, I know you have to stay here, but could you please be quiet? She's going through a lot right now. So she had an ultrasound machine. So she told me, she says, Pam, she says, I don't see your baby on this ultrasound, which means you probably passed it already. She was like, but we need to know for sure because we need to see it to make sure that everything passed and know if we need to do a DNC or what we need to do. And so she says, where's, what you bleed on? Where is it? I said, I don't know. I don't know. I just was busy trying to get here. I didn't really keep up with anything else. So she says she understood and she turned to them, she asked them, she says, the linens, everything that she bled on, I need that. Where is it? They told her they put it in the trash. And when I think of everything that I've been through in my life, that has to be like the lowest point in my life for me to hear someone say that they just discarded my baby in the trash like it was trash and it was nothing. And that was the tone that they had, like it was trash. So having taking that in and then still being in pain and then looking at them like they down between my legs, it was bad. Although we make mistakes, we are human. We want to be accountable. We want to do the time, but we don't want to be dehumanized. We don't want to be treated like we're nothing. We want to be treated with dignity and as women and as human beings.
Hello, everyone. I am Pamela Wynn. I thank my team, Sophia and Abby, for doing such a great job of presenting trash to you all today. You just witnessed my lived experience, my own story, but as you heard, my story is just one of many, so many. I get emotional just thinking about it and listening to all of the things. This is hard work, but it's necessary work. So, you know, we do what we have to do and we push through. And I'm thankful to the women who have the courage to share their stories and to join me and mobilize with me to get justice for women. In front of us, we have, you see a big list of inequities that women who are incarcerated experience, down from uniforms to used underwear. Visitation is limited for us. Everything is based on the men, basically. And it really makes being accountable and being responsible for mistakes that you made for you to serve your time because of these extra things that you have to deal with when you're incarcerated. Some of the major things, women being shackled while pregnant, being placed in solitary confinement, not receiving prenatal care, no hygiene products, or having to go to a man and ask for your products. And then on top of that, you know, they give you a limited amount of products, not based on your individual needs, just not even routine medical care that is important for women, such as pap smears and mammograms, all of these things. It's just, you know, the list goes on and on and on. I could really, you know, I am a poster child for why we should have alternative means of being held accountable for things that we do. You can advance to the next slide, Sophia. And who is directly affected most, which is promoted the high incarceration rate of women of color based on them having to survive and take care of their families. Things such as maybe petty shoplifting is now a sentence to be served rather than just a fine or a citation. You can advance the slide. And that is how we have gotten to mass incarceration of women in our nation. What needs to happen? We need to shift the way we look at things, the way we're criminalizing things, the perpetual punishment that brings harm to women, that's sending them home more in a worse condition than when they left. As we know, over 80% of women have experienced some type of abuse. And the inequities that we face during incarceration only adds to that trauma. You can advance the slide. So I'm going to turn it back over to them to talk about the Women's Care Act. So I'll briefly say Women's Care Act is the legislation that we're doing now, We have the Dignity Campaign, which includes the Dignity for Incarcerated Women's Act, which we have successfully passed in 19 states and most recently in North Carolina. And what the Dignity Act does is it eliminates the shackling and solitary, excuse me, I'm going to rewind and say what it should do, what it's supposed to do. What the law says they should do is ban shackling and solitary confinement of incarcerated pregnant women. However, although we have passed these laws and they are active laws, these things are still happening on a very regular basis as if there is no law at all. So our next step to relieve this, because again, there is no data, a very, very limited amount of data, and we don't know where these women are because we don't have that data to protect them properly. We came up with the next step, which is the Women Care Act. CARE is an acronym for Childbirth Alternatives, Resources, and Education. And basically the gist of it is that if a woman is arrested and not bonded out within 72 hours, she's given a pregnancy test. If that test is positive, she automatically has to be released under her own recognizances. No questions asked. Once she's released, if she's convicted and she is sentenced to serve time, that sentence is deferred to 6 to 12 weeks postpartum. This will allow her autonomy over her pregnancy to get the care that she needs, make the choices that she wants to make about delivering her baby, not be induced, which is what is done here in Georgia, not spend a max, if any time at all, with her baby when it's born, and not have to make a decision in 24 hours where her baby goes or it becomes a ward state. That is what's currently going on here in Georgia. So this would alleviate that. And for the babies, of course, they get the opportunities to be breastfed, to get some bonding with their mothers, to be placed in the care that their mother decides is best for them. And then for the state, of course, it saves the states millions of dollars that they could be, of taxpayers' dollars at that, that could be better served in other places. And Sophia and Abby can tell you more about the current campaign that we have around this. We did introduce it in the state here in Georgia. It passed committee hearing unanimously. However, we didn't make it to crossover due to all of the voter suppression bills that were piled up. So we're coming back this year and we're looking to have success.
Great. Yeah. The only thing that I think is worth adding to what Pam has already stated about the Women's Care Act is that it is a true reproductive justice bill. And so it wouldn't just allow for women and femmes to give birth, parent, all of those things in the way that they would like. It also allows them the choice not to be a mother, a choice that in Georgia is, and many other southern states, is very much so at risk at present. But it is even harder to have any type of abortion access within prisons. It's just virtually does not exist. And so this bill would also allow for that, which is a really important part of just equitable healthcare. So like Pam stated, Abby and I are the leaders for the campaign for this upcoming legislative session. And through this presentation, you've kind of seen what one of our major tactics is, and it's centering the stories of the most marginalized, like I said at the very beginning. So in doing that, we believe in the power of fact and evidence and all of those things. But we know that what tends to be most compelling is for people to hear and understand and empathize with the individuals for which the bill is for. And so we're using kind of several different tactics depending on the audience for which we're serving. One that's focused more on the woman, the individual, one that's focused more on the baby, because both there's very clear evidence. I'm sure y'all are very much so aware of the importance of the skin-to-skin contact and of allowing a mother to, give care the way that works for her, and being able to have prenatal health and being able to have parenting classes and all of those things are really important. And so we're illustrating through our campaign what are the things that the average person who is not incarcerated is able to access and experience within their communities connected to pregnancy that incarcerated women are just not able to do. And you saw that illustrated through the list of inequities that Pamela talked about. And so it's things like this talk that are really important to getting the word out, because largely, like I said previously, people just don't know what's happening in prisons, really. And while the conversation of mass incarceration has really come to the forefront of certain public interest and social justice spaces, patriarchy still persists, and the focus still is primarily on men, when women are still a huge and the highest growing population of incarcerated people in the United States. And so this is a dire situation, and this is a dire bill. And you heard from the stories, these women pleading for the resources that this bill would allow them. So we're just working to gain momentum and educate people on the basic needs of incarcerated women in Georgia and in the entire country.
Yes, thank you, Sophia. Hit the next slide. And Abby, you want to tell people how to stay connected with us?
We are on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. We also have a petition with almost 200,000 signatures. I think we're literally like a couple hundred or a couple thousand away from 200,000. And this is really just to present a unified front to lawmakers, because a lot of times they think, oh, well, this only affects women, or this only affects pregnant women or pregnant incarcerated women. And it seems like such a niche group of women that people are like, how does this affect me? But it affects all of us through taxpayer dollars and through basic human decency. It just genuinely affects every single person here. So if you're interested in following our journey and learning more, please connect with us on social media, and please sign the petition.
Yes, thank you, Abby.
I want to say on behalf of DSA, Pamela, thank you so much, Sophia and Abby, for such a wonderful and powerful discussion and presentation today. I would love to open up either the chat or you're welcome to raise your hand if you have questions for Pamela, Abby, or Sophia. Otherwise, I'm more than happy to ask questions that I have, but I wanted to give the crowd obviously a chance to speak first.
I was going to wait to ask this because it's extremely prosaic, but what should we do? What can we do? I mean, you've raised our awareness and shared a really admirable combination of powerful stories and pragmatism. So what do we do?
So as I was saying, we mobilized, we signed the petition. The more signatures on the petition shows that this is an important issue to people across the country. And when we're working on legislation and giving those testimony, we're able to say we have, these number of people that care about this, which in turn should make them care about this, because we are the people that put them in those seats to do what we need them to do. So that's one of the things. As she said, following us on social media, we often update to let you know what states we're working in and what's going on. We have a newsletter that Abby does every month to also let folks know what's going on and where we are and what we're doing. And most times we put a call to action on our social media saying this is what we need on this day. So depending on where we are, we might need you to call a legislator in this state or that state, or, we always put on there what we need. So following us definitely helps. So far, coming up this upcoming session, Alabama is the only state in the South that has not passed the dignity incarceration. So they have dropped their dignity bill. So we will be advocating for the passing of that in Alabama. We're going to be looking at introducing dignity bill in Alaska, and Women's Care Act. We're going to be active here in Georgia, in Florida, and in Ohio with it, starting it out. So like I say, all of these things would be posted on our, on our social media. And also if you get on our listserv, or if you all are interested, Abby and Sophia have created a media packet for both pieces of legislation that we are sending folks that are interested, that you can share on your, so it includes memes for social media. It includes infographics. So when people ask you questions about why is this important and how does it benefit, you can, give them that information.
Okay. Thank you so much. That's incredibly helpful. And I guess I'll have to get a Twitter account now.
And then
We have Twitter, we got Instagram and Facebook. So we have options.
Okay, thank you.
I'll also just add too that monetary support is also really important, especially for organizations such as Restore Her that are primarily employing and supporting formerly incarcerated folks. And so that often comes with lots of different monetary needs, re-entering society based on what your probation and all of those other things looks like. So that's also something that I, would be remiss to plug. And then I also think that it's important for people to be having conversations with their family and their friends and deveiling the mystery, right? We don't want it to be a mystery, what's happening to these women. Lots of you guys were shocked, and I was shocked when I first started doing this work and when I first met Pam. But one thing that Pam and I did when we dreamt up Unlocked Minds was we were very intentional about seeking proximity to the most marginalized. And that's like something that you have to do very intentionally, especially when the community for which you're trying to serve are incarcerated people, because there are many barriers to keep people who are free separate from people who are incarcerated. And if people have family members and loved ones that are incarcerated, then they know that very well from the visitation limitations, especially that were put in place during COVID, that have now kind of been used as a way to keep people from seeing their loved ones. So having these conversations and kind of opening your eyes is something that people can do very easily on their own time to further this agenda of equity for incarcerated folks.
And I just want to add something that I kind of bring up a lot is that when we're talking about prison conditions, a lot of times people are going to be believe someone who has not been in prison more about the conditions than someone that has been in prison. And it's because we are kind of branded as liars and criminals. And so if you are going to educate someone, just know that you kind of have more power than us when you are educating someone, and that they will believe you. And it's things like not having water that's available to drink. A man at the facility I was at died of thirst, and this is a first world country. So just imagine that. And people never believe me. I have to show them the news story. And I'm like, I'm not lying because I've committed a crime. I'm telling the truth. So just know that you have a lot of power in who you are.
I want to give folks a chance to ask some further questions as well. And thank you all so much. I know we have only a couple minutes left. I don't know if anyone in the chat wanted to come off mute. Otherwise, I do have a question in terms of how you all have really handled the pandemic and how that has changed your work and how you've pivoted to really do the important work and make progress despite the fact that we are in very different circumstances than we were almost 2 years ago.
So the pandemic, it affected us in a way that we had to be creative about getting information about what was going on with the women because we were no longer able to go inside. And the correctional system was not being transparent in providing us any information or being cooperative. We were trying to offer services to women. We were advocating for women to be released because of the conditions and being in the pandemic. However, when those women were released, we needed to know so we could be prepared to make sure that they had housing, toiletries, and all the essential, basic essential needs were met. But again, the corrections were not helpful in letting us know when they were releasing people. So we just had to be creative and just create a system to have things in place. So when the women, showed up, we were ready for them. And that included asking folks for space at their homes, paying them additional money to rent rooms, collaborating with hotels for space, all of those type of things, because most of these people did not have places to go. And here in Georgia, again, we have plenty of halfway houses for men, none for women on a state level. And on a federal level, we have 200 beds for men, 13 for women. So that's what we're faced with. So that's one of the other challenges that we're working on now. We did purchase a house that we can house some women, but that's also a priority here is providing housing for these women. Also, we have a reentry program, the Renew, Rebuild, Restore Her Leadership program, where we educate women on how to be more self-sufficient and navigate through the collateral consequences once they're home. That class we were doing in person, now we do it virtually, so we were able to still keep it running. And then even with Unlocked Minds, we were going inside, working with those women, and Sophia had to be creative and come up with a way that we could maintain contact with those women. And we were able to mail books in and, mail educational resources into the ladies. And then the warden would, in return, send us any responses or anything back out.
Thank you so much. I don't know if Fujan wants to ask her question in the chat or if others have questions. I know we have only like 3 minutes left, so maybe one other question. And then I don't know if you all are open. I know that we can happily send out folks emails or they can contact you, I think, through the website as well, if you'd prefer that for follow-up questions.
I can speak on Fujan's question really quickly.
Sure.
So it's kind of a difficult topic to work into conversation like casually. So I think it does get brought up though when we speak about we'll see like crimes committed on the local news. We'll see Datelines like every Friday night. It becomes really popular. So I think changing the minds just starts with empathizing and asking questions. So I'm in a relationship and the person that I'm seeing is very adamant about like, well, they deserve this and they deserve that because they did this and that. And I ask, well, what circumstances do you think drove them to commit that crime? And they'll say something like, well, they're just a bad person. And I'm like, well, I committed a crime. They're like, well, you're a nice criminal. I'm like, no. So yeah, it's hard to work into conversation, but I really think just like kind of planting seeds of doubt in their mind about like maybe they committed this crime because they have there's a trauma to prison pipeline. Maybe they've been abused and they don't know how to cope, or maybe they're facing very difficult financial circumstances and they don't know how to deal with that. And there are a lot of circumstances that we are almost very unaware of that drive people to commit crimes like this. And a lot of crimes are accidents, and we're just like very unaware of it, because when we think of crime, we think of the horrific stuff like serial killers. And, of course, we all think they deserve the absolute worst that America can give them. But there are so many criminals people who have committed crimes who are simply just like, I made a mistake. I wasn't thinking. And they're so young, too. Like the primary age is 16 to 24. So, their brains aren't even fully formed yet. So I think just planting the seeds of doubt is the best way to go about changing someone's mind.
I was also just going to say that oftentimes in America, we believe that the average citizen has the right to play God, or has the privilege or has the ability. And in our system, that's, been the case for certain individuals. But like Abby said, and like someone who we used to do a lot of work with, who's an absolutely brilliant woman, used to tell me all of the time, is that if someone's ending up in the carceral system, every other system has already failed them.
Right.
Every other system has already failed them. People don't end up, only 7% of people that are in prison are career criminals. which means that 93% of people most likely have been criminalized for being poor, Black or brown, LGBTQIA, right? Because lots of trans folks and lots of queer folks are involved in sex work. It's things like that that end with people being incarcerated. And so, and then also what Abby said, education is also a big one. Education is probably one of the largest systems that fails people and leads them, which is, you know, when people talk about the school to prison pipeline. And then generationally, trauma and prison and all of those things, it's cyclical. So that's another reason why the Women's Care Act is so important, that when you have a child that's born in prison, the likelihood that that child will then spend time in prison as an incarcerated person skyrockets.
Right.
It skyrockets. So we have to do the work to try to heal some of these systems. And when you tell people these statistics, they're always shocked. People who have the inability to empathize with incarcerated people because they believe that they're criminals, if you lay some of those statistics on them, most likely they will not have an immediate response.
I know we're about a minute over. I just want to give Pamela sort of a last word. And then of course, please everyone, virtual round of applause. This was an amazing, amazing seminar, but Pamela, I'll turn it over to you for final words.
Sure. So first of all, I want to thank you all for joining today. Thank you all for inviting us to share these ladies' stories with you and share the work that we're doing with you as well. The last thing I would like to close out with, I want to remind folks that 90% of the people that are incarcerated are returning home. They're not going to be there forever. We need to remember that. So I think what we need to do is plan and do something different to support and uplift these people, because whether we want them or not, they're going to be returning back to our communities. They're not going to be in silos. They're going to be next door. They're going to be in the grocery store. They're going to be where their kids are going to be, where your kids are. So it's very important to remember that when we place all these over 40,000 collateral consequences in the way that prevent people from being productive. Although we make mistakes, I know for myself, it was never an intention to make that mistake and be incarcerated. And I, of course, in my community, I want to support, I want to be productive, to create better communities and make things better for where we are.
Thank you so much. And thank you all for attending. This was an incredible seminar. Thank you.
Thank you all.